The night I slept in my car outside my own daughter's house, I realized I had raised successful children, but failed to raise kind ones. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, people associated my name with control, precision, and results. I built a logistics and supply consulting firm in Portland, Oregon from nothing, starting with a folding desk, a borrowed laptop, and a promise I made to myself after my husband died suddenly 12 years ago. Everyone told me the company would collapse without him. Clients quietly prepared to leave. Competitors waited like vultures. I did not grieve the way people expected. I worked. I worked until my hands shook and my voice went hoarse from negotiations. I worked because 3 children were watching me, and I needed them to believe that stability was still possible. For 3 decades, my company grew steadily. Not flashy, not famous, but dependable. I solved problems other firms could not. I kept factories moving and contracts alive. By the time I turned 60, I was financially secure in a way my younger self could not have imagined. Houses were paid for, accounts were healthy, doors opened when I knocked, and every single thing I built, every long night and personal sacrifice, I told myself it was for my children. Lauren, my oldest, lived in a beautiful home outside Lake Oswego. She moved comfortably in circles where appearances mattered more than truth. Victor, my middle child, wore tailored suits and spoke in measured tones that made people trust him instantly. He advised surgeons and executives, people who never asked about his family, only his credentials. And then there was Noah, my youngest. Noah chose to work as a public school counselor. He lived simply, earned modestly, and never once asked me for help unless it was advice. The family never said it out loud, but I felt the quiet disappointment surrounding his choices, including my own. I paid for everything: educations, down payments, emergency rescues. I told myself that was love. If a problem arose, I solved it with money. If someone struggled, I removed the struggle instead of letting them feel it. Over time, I became something dangerous without realizing it. I became indispensable, and that allowed everyone to stop seeing me as a person. The realization came quietly. On an ordinary Tuesday, I received 3 calls. Lauren needed money to secure a business opportunity. Victor wanted a short-term loan to smooth a professional transition. Both spoke quickly, efficiently, as if reading from internal scripts. Later that evening, Noah called. He did not ask for anything. He asked if I was sleeping well. He told me about a student who finally spoke in class after weeks of silence. He asked if I had eaten dinner. I sat alone in my office long after the city lights came on, staring at a skyline I no longer felt connected to. I reviewed years of financial transfers to my children. The numbers were staggering. What unsettled me was not the money, but the pattern. 2 children who reached for me when they needed something. One who reached for me because I was his mother. That night, something inside me broke open. I saw a future where my health failed, my resources disappeared, and my children stood at a distance, unsure what to do with a version of me that no longer provided solutions. I realized I did not know who they were without the safety net I had woven beneath them. So I made a decision that terrified me. I would disappear. Not dramatically, not publicly, quietly. I would remove the money, the influence, the identity they relied on. I would become someone they did not recognize. I would knock on their doors not as a provider, but as a burden. I told myself it was a test. But deep down, it was something else. It was the last question a mother asks when she is afraid the answer will hurt more than the uncertainty. I did not tell anyone what I was about to do. Not my assistant, not my children, not even the people who thought they knew me best. The only person I informed was my attorney, a quiet man named Thomas Hale, who had handled my affairs for years without ever asking unnecessary questions. When I told him I wanted to step away temporarily and limit access to my accounts, he studied my face for a long moment before nodding. "You understand this could go badly," he said. "I understand it already has," I replied. Within 48 hours, everything that defined my life was stripped away by my own hand. I transferred decision-making authority to Thomas. I turned off my primary phone and left it locked in a desk drawer. I packed only what would not draw attention: a change of clothes, a blanket, a bottle of water. I walked into a thrift store and bought a coat that smelled faintly of dust and old detergent. It was too big and too thin for winter, but it made me look like someone people would not ask questions about. The hardest part was leaving my condo. I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, staring at clean surfaces and framed memories, knowing I would not see them again for a while. I expected fear. Instead, I felt something close to relief. For the first time in years, no one could reach me for anything. That first night, I slept in my car. I parked on a quiet street far from my usual routines. The cold settled into my bones faster than I expected. I woke every hour, convinced someone was watching me. In the early morning, a police cruiser slowed near my car, then moved on. I sat up shaking, suddenly aware of how fragile I had become without status to shield me. The second day, I walked. I walked until my legs ached and my back burned. People passed me without seeing me. A woman clutched her purse tighter when I asked for directions. A man avoided eye contact entirely. I ate a cheap sandwich standing up because sitting down felt like admitting defeat. That night, I stayed in a public parking structure. Rain soaked through the seams of my coat. I wrapped myself in the blanket and watched headlights sweep across concrete walls. A stranger approached me briefly, a man in his 40s with tired eyes. He offered me a cup of coffee from a paper thermos. "You look like someone who used to have everything," he said quietly. I asked him what he meant. "People who choose this kind of test usually forget something," he replied. "You might not like what you learn. Truth does not always come with repair." His words stayed with me long after he left. By the third day, my body hurt in places I did not know could ache. My hands were cracked from the cold. My reflection in a darkened window startled me. I looked smaller, older, invisible, and for the first time, doubt crept in. I wondered if I was punishing myself instead of seeking clarity. I nearly stopped then. I stood on a corner and considered calling Thomas, ending the experiment, going home. Instead, I thought of the way Lauren spoke when she needed something: efficient, detached. I thought of Victor calculating risk even in personal moments. And I thought of Noah asking if I had eaten dinner. I decided the order mattered. I would go to Lauren first, then Victor. And only then, when I had no strength left to pretend otherwise, I would go to Noah. Not because I expected kindness from him, but because I was afraid of how much it would hurt if he turned me away too. Lauren's house sat behind a tall iron gate in a neighborhood where even the sidewalks looked polished. I knew every turn of that road by heart. I had driven it countless times for birthdays, holidays, quick drop-offs of things she needed but did not have time to pick up herself. This time, I parked several blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, my hands buried deep in the sleeves of the oversized coat. Each step felt heavier than the last. The gate was closed. Of course it was. I pressed the intercom button with a finger that trembled more from anticipation than cold. A soft chime rang, followed by silence. Then Lauren's voice came through the speaker, clipped and distracted. Yes, it was strange hearing her speak to me like a stranger. No warmth, no recognition, just impatience. "Lauren," I said, "it's me, your mother." There was a pause, long enough for hope to flare, and then begin to die. The gate buzzed and opened just wide enough for a person to slip through. I pushed it gently and walked up the long stone path I had helped pay for years ago. When the front door opened, Lauren did not step outside. She stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, as if blocking an intrusion. She looked flawless. Hair styled, sweater perfectly pressed. Everything about her announced comfort and control. Her eyes traveled over me slowly, from my shoes to my coat, and settled somewhere near my shoulder, avoiding my face. "What are you doing here, Mom?" she asked, lowering her voice. I told her the story I had practiced. I said I had lost everything, that the business had collapsed, that I had nowhere to go, that I just needed a place to sleep for a night or two until I could figure things out. She did not interrupt me. She did not comfort me. She glanced over her shoulder once toward the interior of the house, then back past me toward the street. I recognized that look immediately. It was the look of someone calculating exposure. "This is really not a good time," she said finally. "We have people coming over later." I nodded and said I understood. I told her I could sleep anywhere. The couch, the garage. I would leave early. No one would even know I was there. Her expression tightened. "Mom, you cannot stay here. People talk. You know how this neighborhood is, and honestly, this kind of stress is not good for you or for us." Us. The word landed hard. She shifted her weight and folded her arms as if creating a barrier. I saw irritation flicker across her face, quickly masked by something that resembled concern. "There are resources for situations like this," she continued. "Shelters, organizations. I can help you find a number to call." I asked her to look at me. She did not. I reminded her of things I had never once used as leverage before. The tuition, the down payment, the nights I stayed awake waiting for her to get home safely when she was younger, the vacations, the safety I tried to give her. Her eyes hardened. "That was your choice," she said quietly. "You always did things your way. You cannot expect me to rearrange my life because you made a mistake." A mistake. That was what my desperation had become. I felt something shift inside my chest, a small, tearing sensation I could not name. I asked her again. "Just one night." She shook her head. "I am sorry, Mom. I really am. But this cannot become a situation." The door closed slowly, deliberately. The lock clicked into place, so I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the wood grain I had admired once when the house was new. When I finally turned away, I did not feel anger. I felt grief. Not for the comfort I had lost, but for the daughter I realized I no longer knew. Victor's house was nothing like Lauren's. Where her home announced elegance and belonging, his projected distance and efficiency. Glass, steel, sharp lines. It looked less like a place to live and more like a statement meant to be admired from the outside. I stood on the sidewalk for several seconds before approaching the door, steadying my breathing, preparing myself for whatever version of rejection waited there. When I rang the bell, the door opened almost immediately. Victor stared at me as if he were trying to solve a puzzle that did not fit any category he recognized. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning my coat, my shoes, my posture. "Mom," he said finally, "what happened to you?" For a brief moment, hope flared again. His voice held surprise, maybe even concern. He stepped aside and motioned me in quickly, then closed the door behind me with care that felt more like concealment than welcome. I remained standing in the entryway. He did not invite me further inside. The space smelled faintly of disinfectant and expensive cologne. Everything was immaculate. "Sit down," he said, gesturing vaguely toward a bench near the door. I sat. "Tell me what is going on." I told him the same story. The collapse. The losses. The nights without shelter. I kept my voice steady even when my hands shook. Victor listened with his arms crossed, his weight shifting from one foot to the other. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "This is complicated," he said. "I have obligations, patients, partners. I cannot have this kind of thing become visible." Visible. The word echoed in my mind. I told him I only needed a place to rest. One night, I promised I would leave before morning. He shook his head. "That is not realistic. People notice things. And I need to protect my professional image. You understand how these situations can be misinterpreted." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. It was sleek and expensive. The kind he liked to carry because it made a statement even when closed. He counted out a few bills carefully and held them toward me without stepping closer. "Take this. Go somewhere warm. Get cleaned up. Once you are in a better position, we can talk about options." I stared at the money. It felt heavier than it should have. "You want me to leave?" I said. "I want to help you in a way that makes sense," he replied. "This is the best I can do right now." I asked him if he remembered studying for his licensing exams at my kitchen table. If he remembered the nights I brought him food because he forgot to eat. If he remembered how scared he was of failing and how I told him we would figure it out together no matter what. His jaw tightened. "That was different," he said. "I was working toward something. This feels like a step backward, as if a mother in need were an obstacle on a timeline." He placed his hand on my shoulder and guided me toward the door. The gesture was gentle, almost rehearsed. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," he said. "I need to focus. Please understand." As he opened the door, I noticed his phone in his other hand, the camera lens briefly visible. I did not think much of it then. I was too focused on the cold air rushing in, on the weight of the bills still clutched in my hand. The door closed behind me before I reached the end of the walkway. I stood under the porch light for a moment, listening to the quiet. Then I folded the money and placed it deep in my pocket, not as help, but as proof. 2 doors closed. One remained. And suddenly, I was no longer sure I wanted to knock on it at all. I waited longer than I should have before going to Noah's house. Not because I needed rest, but because fear had finally caught up with me. 2 doors had already closed. If the third one did too, I was not sure what part of me would survive that. Noah lived outside Salem, in a neighborhood where houses leaned slightly with age and lawns were cared for by the people who lived in them, not by hired crews. I parked at the end of the street and walked the rest of the way, my breath shallow, my chest tight. His house was small, one story, pale siding that had seen better years. There was a porch light on. That light alone almost made me turn away. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Mom Noah's voice cracked on the word. He did not hesitate. He did not scan the street. He did not ask questions. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me before I could explain anything. I felt his hands on my back, steady and warm, and something inside me broke loose. Lily appeared behind him, already reaching for my arm. "Come in," she said softly. "You're freezing." The warmth hit me all at once. The smell of soup, clean laundry, something baking. It smelled like safety. Noah guided me to the couch. Lily disappeared down the hall and returned with a blanket, then knelt to help me take off my shoes. "Tell us what happened," Noah said, his voice low but urgent. I told them. I kept it simple. I said I had lost everything, that I had been sleeping in my car, that I did not know what to do next. Noah's eyes filled. He did not interrupt. Lily sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. When I finished, Noah stood up. "You're staying here," he said. "There's no discussion." "We don't have much," Lily added, meeting my eyes. "But we have enough," I protested weakly. I told them they did not have room, that I would sleep on the floor. Lily shook her head. "You'll take the bed," she said. "We'll be fine out here." They moved with quiet efficiency. Lily set water to boil. Noah brought out clean clothes, some of his, some of hers. Nothing matched. Nothing was expensive. Everything was offered without hesitation. After I showered, I sat at their small table and ate soup that tasted better than anything I could remember. They talked about their day, about students, about a leak in the roof they were saving to fix. They spoke to me like I belonged there. Later that night, as they thought I was asleep, I heard them in the kitchen. "We'll figure it out," Noah whispered. "I can pause the retirement account. There'll be penalties, but we can manage." Lily was quiet for a moment. "Money can recover," she said. "People don't always get that chance." I closed my eyes and let the tears fall silently. In that moment, I understood something I had avoided for years. Love does not wait until it is convenient. It does not require guarantees. It acts even when it costs. They slept on the floor that night. I lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed by a truth I could no longer deny. I had come looking for answers. What I found was grace. I woke before dawn with a feeling I could not place. It was not guilt, not fear exactly. It was the quiet certainty that something had already shifted beyond my control. Lily was awake when I came into the kitchen. She stood by the window holding a mug, watching the street as if she were waiting for something. When she turned, her expression was gentle, but searching. "You did not sleep much," she said. "Neither did you," I replied. She nodded once, then surprised me by asking a question I was not ready for. "Can I ask you something honestly?" I told her yes. "You do not look like someone who lost everything overnight," she said. "Your fear is real. Your exhaustion is real. But your story has gaps." I felt my chest tighten. She did not sound accusing. She sounded observant. I did not answer right away. She continued quietly. "The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you carry silence. I see those things every day in my work. You are not reckless. You are not impulsive. And you do not seem confused. You seem intentional. I asked her why she had not said anything before. Because it did not matter, she replied. Whatever the truth is, you showed up needing help. That is all that mattered to us. Her words landed with more weight than any accusation could have. Later that morning, Noah left early for work. Lily stepped out for a short cleaning shift she had picked up months ago and never complained about. I was alone in the house for the first time since arriving, and that was when my phone vibrated. I had kept a single emergency phone hidden in my bag. Only Thomas had the number. When I answered, his voice was tight. "We have a situation, Evelyn." He told me about the recording. Victor had not meant for it to spread, at least not publicly. He had sent a short clip to a private professional forum asking for advice on how to handle a family member showing signs of instability. My face was partially visible, my voice unmistakable. The tone of the discussion quickly turned cruel. Within hours, the clip left the forum. By the time Thomas called me, it had been shared dozens of times in local circles. People speculated. Some mocked. Others questioned my competence. A few recognized me. I felt the air leave my lungs. This was no longer a private test. It was becoming a public humiliation. Thomas asked where I was. I told him. There was a pause. "That might be the safest place you could be right now," he said. "But you need to decide how this ends. If you wait, the narrative will be written without you." I hung up and sat in silence. When Lily returned, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she did not look shocked. She looked sad. "He was protecting himself," she said. "That does not excuse it, but it explains it." I asked her if she was angry. "At him, yes," she said. "At you, no. You were testing love because you were afraid you would not find it. That fear does not make you cruel. It makes you human." She took a breath. "But you cannot hide anymore." I nodded. The test had revealed more than I planned. It had exposed not just my children, but the way power distorts compassion when left unchecked. And now the truth had to come out before the lie swallowed me whole. I called Thomas back. "It is time," I said. "Bring everything." But not to punish, to confront. As I ended the call, Lily placed her hand over mine. "Whatever happens next," she said, "you are not alone." For the first time since this began, I believed it. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the real reckoning had only just begun. They arrived separately, exactly as I expected. Lauren's car turned onto the street first, too polished for the neighborhood, slowing as if unsure it belonged there. Victor followed minutes later, parking a careful distance away. I watched from the window as they stepped out. Both dressed for control rather than comfort. Lauren adjusted her coat. Victor checked his phone. Neither of them looked toward the house with warmth. They looked irritated, suspicious. When Noah opened the door, Lauren's first words were not hello. "Why are we here?" she asked. "What is this about?" Victor scanned the room, his eyes landing on Thomas first, then on the documents spread across the table, then finally on me. His face tightened. "Mom," he said carefully. "What is going on?" I did not invite them to sit. I stood instead, wearing Lily's sweater, my hair still unstyled, my hands steady in a way they had not been days earlier. "I knocked on both of your doors 3 nights ago," I said. "I told you I had lost everything. I asked for shelter." Lauren opened her mouth immediately. "I did not know it was really you," she said quickly. You looked unstable. Anyone would have been cautious." Victor did not speak. His jaw was rigid. His eyes avoided mine. "You knew it was me," I said to him. "You just decided I was inconvenient." Thomas stepped forward then, his voice calm and precise. "For clarity," he said, "Evelyn Carter did not lose her business. Her assets were never at risk. This was a controlled absence. A test of response under perceived loss." Lauren's face drained of color. "A test," she repeated. "You tested us," I corrected her. "I tested whether you would see me as your mother without the protection of money." Silence filled the room. Victor spoke next, his tone defensive. "This is manipulative. You put us in an impossible position." "No," I said. "I put you in an honest one." Thomas placed a tablet on the table and tapped the screen. The video played silently. A short clip. Me standing in Victor's entryway, his voice calm, distant. The phone clearly visible in his hand. Lauren turned toward him. "You recorded her." Victor looked away. "I needed documentation," he said, "in case it escalated. In case your mother became a liability," Lily said quietly. That was the moment something shifted. Lily stepped forward, not angry, not loud. "I knew something was off when she arrived," she said. "I suspected the truth before anyone told me. But we opened the door anyway. Because needing help should never require proof of worth." Lauren stared at her, searching for words that would restore balance, control, advantage. She found none. Noah spoke then, his voice shaking but steady. "I spent years thinking I was the disappointment, the one who did not live up to the family standard. But when Mom showed up scared and cold, the only standard that mattered was whether we loved her enough to act." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "I was scared," she said. "I did not want people to see her like that." "That is exactly the problem," I replied. "You were protecting your image, not your mother." Thomas cleared his throat. "Evelyn initially intended to revise her estate documents today," he said, "to remove Lauren and Victor entirely." Lauren gasped. Victor finally looked up, fear breaking through his composure. "But she has chosen a different course," Thomas continued. "The inheritance is frozen. Conditional." "Conditional how?" Victor asked. "Accountability," I said. "Therapy. Service. Time. Real effort. Not apologies spoken under threat of loss." Lauren nodded frantically. "We will do it. All of it." I looked at her for a long moment. "Change is not proven in moments like this," I said. "It is proven in the quiet months after, when no one is watching." I turned to Noah and Lily. "What you gave me was not shelter," I said. "It was dignity, and that is something I intend to honor now." Thomas handed Noah a folder. Inside were documents outlining a new initiative, a community program funded by my firm, focused on transitional support and counseling services. Noah and Lily were listed as co-directors. "Not money for comfort," I said. "Resources for purpose." Noah stared at the papers, overwhelmed. "You do not owe us this," Lily said softly. "I know," I replied. "That is why I am giving it." Lauren and Victor stood frozen, watching as something shifted that money could not immediately reclaim. The reckoning was not loud. It was final. The house felt different after they left, not quieter, lighter. Noah sat beside me on the couch, exhaustion finally visible in his posture. Lily moved through the kitchen, washing cups that did not need washing, giving everyone space to breathe. Outside, the street returned to its normal rhythm, unaware that something fundamental had shifted inside those walls. I stayed one more night, not because I needed shelter anymore, but because I needed to remember what it felt like to belong without conditions. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, I realized the test had never truly been about my children. It had been about me, about the values I rewarded, the silences I allowed, the way I equated success with comfort and confused generosity with love. Lauren and Victor did not become who they were by accident. They became that way because I taught them that money fixed everything, that appearances mattered, that discomfort should always be avoided. They learned the lesson perfectly. Noah learned something else, not because I taught it better, but because he chose to listen to a different voice, a quieter one, the kind that speaks when no one is watching. And Lily became the mirror I did not know I needed. She saw the truth before it was spoken and chose compassion anyway. Not because she expected a reward, but because that is who she is. I did not lose my family that week. I found it. I learned that love revealed under pressure is the only love that matters. That kindness delayed until it is safe is not kindness at all. And that legacy is not measured in what we leave behind, but in who we protect when we are stripped of power. I went looking for answers dressed as a woman with nothing. What I discovered was worth more than everything I own. 5 lessons stayed with me. Wealth reveals values, but loss reveals character. Love that waits for certainty is not love. Children become what we reward, not what we say. Kindness given without witnesses is the purest kind. And family is not who needs you when you are strong, but who stays when you are not. Thank you for listening to this true story. What lesson did you take from it? And which city or state are you watching from today? If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave your thoughts in the comments.